You're probably wondering, why is that idiot walking up and down that garden? Well, it's my mum and dad's garden, and the reason is this. Yep, I've got COVID. And on the Isle of Man, COVID rules mean that you've got to stay home for 10 days. I decided to take inspiration from Captain Tom and walk up and down my garden. I didn't really. To be honest, in order to do a 20-mile walk, I'd have to do that there and back 1,300 times, so no. But that is not the only black cloud that's appeared on this week's horizon. What's appeared this week is this. And so I shall tell you the story about how it came about. Imagine if this situation existed. You'll say it's stupid, but just imagine it existed. There's a law made that says if you wear red, you'll be fined £1,000. So people are quickly taking off the red hats and the red underwear and things like that. But then they say, no, hang on a minute though, because if you don't wear red, you'll also get fined £2,000. You might think that's a ridiculous situation. And even if laws like that were invented, then the police force wouldn't enforce them. They would go, that's a bit daft. We won't bother sort of fining people. We'll just pretend that's not on the law books. But in this case, the police not only enforced these rules, but broke the law themselves, I believe, in order to enforce them. And by enforcing them and that fine, they would generate another fine for you as well on top of that, for something that you couldn't avoid as well. You might be thinking this is nonsense, and it is nonsense, but it's entirely true. Back in March 2021, I was returning from Spain. It was a time of sort of high COVID, and the UK had just introduced its new passenger locator form, which if you didn't fill it in, you got fined £1,000. And for people coming back to the UK and staying in the UK, they had to buy also a COVID test kit. And if they didn't buy a COVID test kit, they got fined an additional £1,000. One problem with the passenger locator form was that, possibly because it was new, it didn't work, or at least not properly. It worked for most people except people who were transiting non-airside. And transiting airside means to arrive at an airport and then leave from the same airport without going through custom controls. But I wasn't doing that. So what happened was I was arriving at Portsmouth docks and then was going to drive across Britain to Heysham to get the ferry to the Isle of Man. And this, even though this was something that was entirely legal, it was impossible to do at that time without generating at least one fine, possibly several fines. The day before the ferry to Portsmouth, I filled in the passenger locator form. Remember that you had to fill it in or else you got fined £1,000. And it was all going well until it came to one page. And on that page, you had three options and you had to choose one option. If you didn't choose an option, you couldn't complete the form, so you'd be fined £1,000. And the three options were, are you staying in the UK, which I wasn't? Are you transiting airside, which I wasn't? And then there was a third option for truck drivers, I suppose, which was, are you repeatedly entering the country and leaving the country? So there was no option. Now, it's, as far as I'm aware, illegal to lie on a government form, knowingly lie on a government form. But I figured it was better to pick the nearest option than get fined £1,000. So I clearly wasn't staying in the UK. So the closest option was to say that I was transiting airside when I was actually just transiting non-airside, the normal way you would transit. And so I filled it in, but I was still apprehensive about it. I'd done a lot of research before the trip, and all the information that the government were giving seemed quite vague and a bit contradictory at places. And I had a bad feeling as I approached the passport control in Portsmouth. And I was right to have a bad feeling, because they said, oh no, you're still supposed to buy a test kit, even though I wasn't staying in the UK. And I said to them, but you need to have a UK address to get a test kit. And then it said, doesn't matter. And they got me into like a pen type thing with a car, and waited quite a while, and then was interviewed for, I don't know, 2 hours, something like that, where they said, yeah, you need a test kit, even though there's no way I could buy a test kit because I didn't have a UK address. So it sort of gets more surreal, because the police then said, you've got to buy a test kit now, and the guy gave me an iPad in which to enter my order details, and I entered my order details and pressed submit, and I felt quite happy when the form said invalid address, or actually invalid postcode it said, because it wasn't a UK address. And so the copper was only a young lad, he was only about 25, and he didn't know what to do, so he went to see a superior. So what happened next was obviously ordered by a superior, and so he came back in and said, oh, I know what to do, we've done this before. So I wasn't the only person that this happened to. And he took the iPad off me and he changed my address so that the postcode was now the postcode of Portsmouth Docks. So I would think that a policeman, if he asked, I mean, that's lying on a government form as well, which I guess is technically illegal. But he was the one who entered the postcode, so that's not my crime. But I would think a policeman having to lie on a government form in order to make a system work should know that there's something pretty wrong with that system. The command had come from higher above, so maybe this was out what they've been told to do by government, I don't know. But it just seems odd that a clearly broken system would then be executed in a broken way by the police. But you know, it gets better, because he then wrote out this fixed penalty notice, the £1,000 fine. Just to be clear, the fine was for not buying a test kit that I couldn't actually buy because I didn't have a UK address. But he said, and I said, you know, I find this a bit surreal. I've never been in trouble with the police before, and he more or less dismissed it and said, probably nothing will come of this, because you know, we've been stopping everybody. There's been people who've not even filled in the passenger locator form. We've stopped loads of pensioners, and some of them don't even know what the internet is, because you could only fill it in via the internet. So I assumed nothing would come of that transaction, and it was just a little bit disturbing, a little bit Kafkaesque, but you know, one of those things. So I left the police holding, whatever you call it, and went to Heysham and got the ferry over to Isle of Man. And I don't know if you remember, but with the testing kits, you had 2 tests in there, and one had to be returned on day 2 and one on day 8 or 9, I think it was day 8. And there was a £300 fine for not returning each of those tests. So day 2 arrived and my test kit still hadn't turned up. Day 3, no. Day 4, no. Luckily, when I ordered it, or when I was forced to order it, an email came with a reference number, so I could track the parcel. And of course it was delayed, because my parcel was in fucking Portsmouth, where it'd been told to go. So eventually on day 8 it arrived. So I thought, okay, I'll do these 2 tests now. I don't want 2 £300 fines in addition to a £1,000 fine. So I read the little card that came with it, and it said these tests must be returned by being posted in a priority post box. And I didn't know where my nearest priority post box was, so there was a handy little web link to a program where you could find your nearest priority post box. And my nearest priority post box was in Heysham, which is 75 miles away and a 4-hour ferry ride away, because the only place that there are priority post boxes is the UK. So I was a bit concerned that I couldn't send it back. So I managed to find a number, phone somebody up, and I explained my situation to the woman who answered, and she went, oh, you're on the Isle of Man, are you? Oh, you don't need to bother sending it back then. No, it doesn't matter. I think, why was I forced to buy it if I didn't need to send it back? Having said that, I've only got her word for it, and maybe the £600 fines are going to come soon. You're thinking, it's been over a year, hasn't it? Yeah, but this fine only arrived this week. and that was over a year from when it was issued. So I'd thought that it wasn't going to come. So there's several reasons why I didn't think it was going to come. One, because it had been a year. One, because the policeman said it probably wouldn't come. And two, because the very problem with the passenger locator form was fixed quietly sometime between then and December, which was the next time I came in to Britain. In December, there was an option to say I'm transiting and you didn't need to buy a test kit. So the fact that they were enforcing a badly designed law that they fine people for, I would have thought they would have gone, okay, this was wrongly issued, so let's forget about it. So the other thing that's worrying is this. See, no right to appeal. You can appeal a murder sentence, can't you? But you can't appeal a fixed penalty notice. And I'm not going to pay. I will genuinely go to prison before I pay a penny of a fine that I'd never done anything wrong to receive, and which for the police, in order to enact, had to lie on a government form and to sell me a kit I didn't need and couldn't possibly send back, and would therefore generate an additional £600 fine. That's what could happen. So maybe I'm going to prison. Maybe this trip's going to be very short. I find it surreal. It's somewhere between Carry On and Kafka. It's surreal. So I'm making this video so that if anything does happen to me, if I go quiet for a while, if I mention, say, when I'm in Germany, or I've got to fly back to England for a court case, and then it turns out I'm put away, it'd be nice if you remembered this video and came back and shared the hell out of it, just to highlight what a messed up system Britain has, in this case at least. So yeah, remember that, please.